She's a presidential candidate. She is running for president of 2020. We want to give her a huge round of applause. We have some very important questions for her. Let's give a warm welcome for Jade Simmons.
Yes. Welcome to the show.
Thank y'all so much for having me. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Absolutely. First and foremost, we got to talk about your style, how beautiful you are. We got to talk about we get all that. Let's get all that out the way first. But so, just real quickly, I think that is important for people to see, and we're going to talk about you being a presidential. It's interesting to say that presidential candidate, and I just went out, it's one thing to, when you say presidential candidate, especially president of the United States, it's one image that comes to mind.
That's right.
Right. And we're being frank about that. Right.
Sure.
And it's definitely, you don't necessarily think of a black man per se. Since we had Obama, now you made President Obama, you might think about that. We think president, of course, we think of a white man. Lately, since Hillary Clinton ran, we might even think of, a white woman. Yeah. I'm not a sister, and it's good to see you there. So, before we start anything, I have to ask you, because I know it's, potentially young ladies who may be looking at this and, now can potentially say, you know what, I think I want to be president. What inspired you to run for this particular position?
Yeah, I mean, we were just at an event here in Philadelphia, and there was a gentleman there, and he said, I had to come because this is history in the making. My running mate is also a Black woman. And so we doubled down on it. We don't apologize for the fact that we're females, for the fact that we're African American, for the fact that we're women of faith, for the fact that we're non-politicians. We say all of those things proudly, and we believe each of those things helps us lean into this moment uniquely. But, long story short, this is a decision that my family and I came to over a matter of years. But truth be told, I honestly thought the timeline was going to be longer down the road. But how many of you know what it's like to plan out something, to think you're on your timeline, but the times themselves will tell you something else? And I'm the daughter of a civil rights activist. My mother as well works in higher education. And the way that we were raised is when you see a void, when you hear that there are voices missing from the conversation, when you find yourself complaining all the time about what isn't being done, at some point you have to ask yourself the hard question, is there anything you can lend to this moment? So you'll see when you go to Operation Restoration, 2020.com, you'll see serious proposals and policies. We've been running since January. Wow. Most of your listeners, you three, probably are just now hearing about me for the first time, which is a tragedy because we've been here since January of 2020. So I hope we'll get into why is it that mainstream media has worked over time to make sure you don't know there's another voice out here vying for your hearts, your minds, vying to be the person bringing you powerful solutions. But I'll end by saying race relations was a strong determining factor for me. I felt like we would be at an all-time low with that. I also felt like economic disparity between the haves and have-nots was at a level that we could no longer ignore. But I didn't know COVID-19 was going to do what it did. I didn't know that the murder of George Floyd was going to set off what it did. So I feel even more confirmed after the fact that this is the crucial moment to offer something new to our nation.
Fantastic. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, since you brought her up and his two sisters running, who what's her name? Your running mate? Who?
Yes, her name is Claudeliah Rose. This is another bad sister. Listen, we don't slack around with this thing. People say, why are you playing games in this moment? The only game to be played is to allow the current two-party system to continue to keep us in this stronghold that doesn't allow us to vote for our own interests. So Miss Rose, who you may get to meet later tonight, she is an engineer. And when I tell you this woman is brilliant when it comes to strategy and execution, not only is she an engineer, but she works for a major aerospace and defense company. So we're talking about someone who has military and defense on the brain. She's talking about how to serve our military service members better, but also how to make sure that the U.S. is not to be played with. not to be played with, but that we also can rise to the occasion of being the benevolent nation that we've always been as well. I think you need mothers like the two of us to birth the movement that we're in and to nurture this nation back to health. So we're excited to offer a powerful, unseen option.
I love that, and I love that you put it that way, and I believe she's actually in here. So, I'm going to bring her in a little later on, and we're going to have both of you guys on. I think that would be, actually, that would be a little monumental. We have a presidential candidate and a VP candidate, and shout out to Ms. Rose, because we're very heavily involved in STEM. And the fact that she's, that's kind of like her scope and that's her profession, I think is very important to get into that, especially as it relates to you being an educator and setting our children up, children that look like us, getting them prepared for a global economy, very competitive. And I think that's important in us being involved in STEM and understand the importance of media literacy, which is why we definitely have you guys on today. I think it's great to have that conversation. So I will be definitely bringing Ms. Rhodes in a minute, so we can have both of you guys on. But I know the ladies had a few questions for you, and as we have absolutely. And as we have this platform, one thing that I always say is we can do and say whatever we want to say, right? And we created this platform to give people like yourself a platform to have a narrative and say what you want to say without being interrupted in what you have to say. And this is why we have it. So I'll defer to you, classy lady. Yep.
Well, I want to thank you for, taking the opportunity to be a Black woman and running for president. I like you said, I didn't know much about you until we heard about you. But as Charles was saying, this is a platform where we are in millions and millions of households across the world and the country. And hopefully now, because mainstream is not hearing your voice, Ms. Simmons, that this is going to be a platform where you're going to be able to let us know what you can do for the United States as the first, Black woman in the event that you were to get selected. My question to you is that I didn't get a chance to get your bio offhand. So I want you to tell me what's your background, if there is any political background that you do have, and what made you charged to being the chief commander of the United States.
Yeah. So I make my career, actually, I'm brought in by some of the world's top corporations, organizations, leadership institutes to speak on and help them push through, communicate through times of challenging change, AKA COVID-19. Look at the moment we're in now. I'm also brought in by these same top corporations to power up their leadership in ways that helps them lead down through to the legacy of their people. So we're talking about replacing self-serving leadership now with servant leadership. So you guys keep saying, what's it going to be like being, the first African-American president? I want to be remembered as the first true servant leader as a president who has decided to prioritize people over politics, partisanship, profit, personal agenda every single time. This will be the first time in the nation that America doesn't have to wonder whose side their president is on. You won't have to wonder if the decisions I'm making are for the benefit of corporate America or are they for the benefit of the people. Because if Americans rally together to elect a nonpartisan independent, they are saying, period, point blank, we are done with politics as usual. So my background is unconventional. I have not held political office, and I think that's exactly what we need, which means I do not come to the table lopsided in my agenda. I only have one mission, which is to create policies that serve as many Americans possible. When people check out the platforms, they're always amazed because it doesn't sound like what they're used to coming from the left or what they're used to coming from the right. It sounds like policy that just looks to serve human beings powerfully. And so a lot of the reason that I'm brought in many times for these same corporations is because I'm looking for mutually beneficial partnerships now. We're in the habit of bailing out companies. We haven't gotten into the habit of requiring something of those companies. We've gotten in the habit of serving corporations. We haven't gotten in the habit of serving our people first before we serve major corporations. So this is a new era, I believe, that's crying out for a new lane of leadership. And the reason I ran for president, maybe not for mayor, is not because I don't believe mayor, governor, senator, congressman is not an important position. It's because we have seen now leadership and the atmosphere of the nation is transformed from the top. It's the one thing that actually trickles down is atmosphere and change. Economics, not so much, but we do know that there can be a mood and a climate set to actually help and elevate progress in our society. And that's what I'm looking to do.
Yeah, fantastic. You have, you are very candid about acknowledging that you don't have kind of background in politics.
Yeah.
What say you to people who believe that in order for you to truly be able to run a country, you need some type of, political background? Hence, that's why we had Hillary Clinton. One of the things that people, when she ran, that they stood upon was she is smart enough and educated enough to run a country because she has so much background in the political sector, right?
Yeah.
You're saying something a little different. What would you say to those who say that, you have no background in politics? How do you believe that you can run such a dynamic country?
Well, first, I think we have to take it up with our forefathers who set the requirements for president, which I meet 10 times over, which is to be 35, a resident of the U.S. and have lived here for 14 years. So first of all, I have the right to run, as every American does who meets those qualifications. That being said, we live in complicated times, and I believe that we have outgrown an era where politics, as usual, will serve us. And I know the current president ran on not being a politician, but I would check him with that, because he's actually financed politicians all of his life. He's always been political, and he jumped into the swamp and became the biggest alligator in it. So I believe actually his allegations of not being a politician were false. But here's the thing. The reason that Hillary Clinton, people liked her, was not because she was a politician. It's because they felt she was brilliant, intelligent, and competent, right? The people who did vote for her. The reason that people don't like the president has nothing to do with his political experience or inexperience. It's because of who he is. Leaders will always lead how they have lived. And so what we ask people to do is decide, how do we want to live through this next era? You write down the ways you feel your leader should communicate, how you want them to make decisions, how you want them to lead, how you want them to behave, how you want them to set the tone. And then you think about the new paradigm shifts that have to happen. Now, you tell me if the current president, who I look at as a bit of an instigator in chief, is the right person to take us through some of the greatest racial unrest we've had. Now, let's look on the other side. We need more than symbolism, right? Everybody's saying they want real change. So if you're serious about having more than people kneeling down at the Capitol in kente cloth, if you're serious about having more than Aunt Jemima yanked off the shelf, a few statues taken down, how are you going to sell me on the fact that the man who was given to President Obama to tone down his change rhetoric is now the candidate for paradigm shifts going into the future? You can't change that packaging, right? So we must now have, I believe, someone who understands the language of race. Race is a second language for me. My father at age 5 and 6 took me to KKK rallies. I saw hate up close. I understand the language of it. I understand how to read, understand between the lines. And I also know how to communicate about the most divisive topics without creating more division. That's what we need if we're going to actually recover from COVID-19, if we're going to rebuild faith in law enforcement, if we're going to actually see a decrease in the killing and the race-based murder of African Americans at the hands of law enforcement. You're going to have someone that speaks plainly, boldly, but also in a way that unifies. And I would put that part of my resume next to any of the candidates currently in the race.
Wow. Yeah. Sizzle, I know you have some questions.
I did have the opportunity to see an interview that you did with the Breakfast Club a little while ago, and I was kind of like, why isn't this candidate being talked about? But my question is, because of the lack of justice for Breonna Taylor and other Black women right now, of course, we are mentally and emotionally struggling, because we often find ourselves at the bottom of the totem pole, despite our accolades and our educational and professional experiences. So how will you position Black women to follow in your footsteps, or how will you create, that open door for Black women and women of color to be able to be in a position of leadership?
This is an exciting time to me. Listen, Breonna Taylor must be a chin up moment for us. This is not a time to hang our heads because the history of our nation has been built on the backs of Black women. It's why I can so passionately and powerfully lean into having a vice presidential running mate who looks like me. I don't have to apologize for that. If you look since the beginning of our nation, from birthing camps, we literally birthed the economy of this nation, providing slaves for this nation to build its economy. You look at every political movement from women's suffrage, which, by the way, we marched for, but didn't get the right for. We were there, yet we were in the back, as you just said. If you look at the civil rights movement, we were there, but we were in the back. We didn't get the credit. You don't hear our names the same way you hear Malcolm and you hear Martin, right? You have to dig a little bit deeper. You might get Rosa every other day if we're lucky. If you keep going and you look at many of the million and billion dollar corporations that I go speak to, all these CEOs at the top, tell me about some Black woman who they can't live without, who the company runs on, who has built the infrastructure. I was at a dinner last night with a Black woman on the right of me who literally writes some of the guidebooks for Chase Bank. You wouldn't know that. You never see her face, but you go in there and their procedure was created by her. Lastly, I'll say Shirley Chisholm, unbought, unbossed, first Black woman to run for president, but she was not unfettered. Her own party held her back and her own people did not support her. So I'm going to say something to keep it real here. I am honored to be on this show. Sparkle, Lauren, to have both of you here, being so, just giving me your platform to be able to speak. Let me just keep it real and say it has not been that way with all Black women. When I tell you the greatest opposition I have faced, the most animosity, the harshest words, the most disrespectful words, the highest level of chauvinism has come from women who look like me. So when we talk about how to position differently in this season, here's what I will tell you. I'm going to serve you whether or not you bring the hate. I'm going to serve you whether or not you bring the shade, because I know that me stepping into this moment is all of us stepping into this moment. And that same animosity that I mentioned is something that was given to us, right? That nature, attitude has been bred into us as a society, as a community. And I believe that withstanding it, in spite of it, is a part of that repositioning. And I do believe that seeing a Black woman elevated, even the ones who threw the shade and the hate, will have pride in that moment when it actually happens. I think we just can't believe that it's our time. You know what I mean? So when we can't believe it for ourselves, when we can't imagine somebody giving this to us, sometimes in that fear and in that rejection, we recycle that and project that back onto people who look like us, who are doing things we hadn't thought to do. So I still stand with Black women. I'm still saying Black girl magic. I'm still saying win with Black women, because I know that when we see each other in the places we've always should have been in the first place, it allows the rest of us to rise up. So I'm excited. This is a chin up moment. I'll end by saying a Department of Justice in the Simmons administration would jump in after a ruling like what you just saw with Breonna Taylor. We would not stand back and take that lightly. You can't tell me that the random neighbor who had bullets lodged in his wall is worthy of justice and not the woman who died in her sleep. You can't tell me that. And by doing that is a slap in the face of not just Black women, but humans in general. To see ourselves deciphered between in that way is an injustice to mankind.
Wow. Let me just fix your crown real quick. You're going to fix this crown. Definitely.
Yes.
But I wanted to say in a more direct way, you mentioned about it being complicated times. I think we've always had complicated times as Black people,
Right?
Except for the times when we were kings and queens, and then when the massacre happened. But during this complicated times, and I'm speaking the future's theory that if you were to become president, what would your Black agenda be? In a direct way to say, this is where I would start to help with reparations or schools or health. What would be your direct agenda for the Black and brown community?
Yeah. You know what's exciting again? Listen, I'm brought in to inspire people to find the silver lining. So even in the darkness of COVID-19 and George Floyd, I get giddy because there's no way we could go through this much battle and not have breakthrough on the other side. So I'm excited about the types of breakthrough, which is why I have a program called Breakthrough for Black America. I'll just stop and say I also have breakthrough for Native Americans, breakthrough for small business owners, breakthrough for young Americans, because those are underserved groups. Here's why we get to be unapologetic about having plans for Black Americans. It's because our society has been unapologetic about having programs that did not include us, having systems that did not include us. I was talking to an advisor today who is a white gentleman, and we are a campaign that is for all of America. I'd be proud to be a president for all Americans, but in this season, we must have a champion for the underserved. So you're gonna hear us talking about education reform. If you go to OperationRestoration2020.com, you're gonna click on Pro-Human, Shades of Breakthrough, and you're gonna see Breakthrough for Black America. Because if we just focus on police reform, that feels good in the moment because it's what's in the news. But if you don't fix education, if you don't fix the school to prison pipeline, and if you don't create economic justice, then you're only getting 1/3 of the pie that's going to help us. So I speak very unapologetically about what I call reinvestment and restitution in our communities. We now have to have funding set aside. Guess what? You mentioned Black and brown. That's important. Minorities as a whole is important. But in this season, we're going to have to be specific. You're going to have funding specifically set aside for Black businesses, for Black home ownership. We need to see corporations investing at least 2% of their annual revenue into Black neighborhoods. When you have gentrification happening, why are we not asking anything of these companies, corporations, and developers that are encroaching into Black communities? So this is a time now of what I call reinvestment. Why? Because you can't argue with that word. You see, you talk reparations, now we're fighting all day long. Let's talk in economic terms here and talk about reinvestment. Why you reinvest in Black communities? Because those are communities with taxpayers in them. And so the same way we treat other communities with taxpayers, we should do the same. I have what I call, it's almost like a new Marshall Plan. You know, back in the 40s, we went to Western Europe and invested $12 billion in their economic future because they were devastated by the war. Yet we've seen Black America be devastated by systemic injustice, and we haven't reinvested. So I do lay out very specific plans. You know, Obama gets thrown a lot of shade these days. People say now he looks centrist. He was radical when he was running, remember, but now he looks centrist. Here's the difference. President Obama didn't have these times. President Obama didn't have it where a George Floyd died and the entire world now is ready to admit we have systemic injustice. President Obama didn't have Reebok and Chase releasing statements of solidarity. So whether or not you think that stuff is sincere, doesn't matter. We need to take advantage of the fact that people are leaning into these realities that we've always known have existed and use this time to create powerful programs.
Great. You know what I have, and after this question, I'm gonna bring Miss Rose in because she's been patiently waiting backstage, and I think that it would be great to have both of you come and talk about the issues, and hopefully you have the time to do so.
Yeah, we got a little time.
Fantastic. So one of the questions that I have is when you think of parties, right? One of the parties that you never think of is the independent. You think Republican, you think Democrat.
Right.
For those who are not aware of what an independent party is, right? Why don't you take the time to explain the independent party and why you specifically want to, I guess, run on that party or within that lane, as opposed to, say, for example, because some of your views are very liberal, right? And so if that is the case, why wouldn't you do Democrat? Or maybe you have some conservative views. Why wouldn't you go Republican? And so I would like for you to just kind of just elaborate a little bit more about the independent party and then talk about why you chose to be independent.
Yeah. And so I'll go you one better. I'm not even running in the independent party. There is a party called the American Independent Party. It's a more right-wing party. I'm running as an unaffiliated independent, as a human being, an individual out here running for president. It's the most difficult route you can take. Why would you take it? Because the moment requires it. I want Americans to be able to go to sleep not wondering, again, whose side their president is on. I have been courted in the past by both parties to run for office. And the reason I haven't is because, quite simply, neither of the parties encapsulates my entire worldview. They want me to pick and choose. My pro-life friends want me to only care about the baby in the womb. They don't want me to talk about George Floyd, the babies dying at the border, the single mom who gets snatched off of assistance in the middle of COVID-19. To me, you've got to be consistent with it. My pro-choice friends don't want me to talk about how do we help a woman also choose to bring life into this earth? How do we make sure more Black women aren't dying in birthing rooms? Can we talk about what family planning looks like? People on the right don't want me to tie that issue with pay equity and say, if you want a woman to choose life, make sure that she can afford it, right? And afford to raise that baby. So I'm forcing difficult conversations, which is what this time requires. And the truth is, this is how we talk about the issue at home, right? But in the news, we're only given the extremes. And so running as an independent, as difficult as it is, well, the reason we do it is because we want Americans to know that there are no strings attached, that no party boss is dictating what I can say. Look at how the Republicans have cowered to the president. Look at how on the left, you only hear a few voices. You hear AOC, you hear Nancy Pelosi, that's about it. So to run even for Congress right now is not enough because your voice is instantly muted depending on who's at the top. So we wanted to avoid the games, avoid the shenanigans, much more difficult route. We've faced extreme, blatant media shutout from mainstream media, from Black media, all who have known about me way before you guys. They've known I've been running since January and have refused to cover the story because they have their hands in the pockets of each party. So independent media right now is crucial for us. So thank you again for having us on.
Absolutely. I appreciate you for coming on the show. And again, this is why we have we have a platform like this, because we're able to pretty much control what our narrative is without someone saying that for us, right? That's why I always say control a narrative, control your own narrative, or someone will create a narrative for you, right? And so without further ado, is it Claudeliah Rose? Did I say that right?
Claudeliah Rose.
Claudeliah Rose. I would love to bring her in. VP candidate.
Yeah.
I'm super excited to have you on the show. I appreciate you taking the time. Waiting backstage until we was able to bring you on, but I'm super excited to have you.
I am super excited to be here. Thank you, Charles, Lauren, and Sparkle. It's an honor to be on 106.5. Thank you again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So here, one of the questions that I always had was, and any one of you can answer this question or take this question, when it comes to these race of who will be president, who will be nominated, all of that, right? One of the things that they say when it becomes really close is, vote for the lesser of the two evils.
Yeah.
And they also talk about, a vote for this person takes away a vote for the other person, right? And so if you don't vote for, say, for example, A, then B will win. So don't throw away your vote. So how do you answer this amongst people who believe that they only have one option and they should vote in order to get a person out of office to which they believe shouldn't be there in the first place?
Yeah.
You want to start with it?
Yeah. Absolutely. So, Charles, awesome question. We do get that question a lot. I'll go back to 2016, right? So Hillary Clinton running against Donald Trump, and you guys made some references to this earlier. I felt that was the same situation that we were in 2016. And I'll tell you, looking at all the media, looking at the platforms of both parties during that time, I felt that I was in a position that in that moment, picking the lesser of two evils. I actually felt like I didn't trust either party. I felt that I really didn't feel like either party was really going to be working in the best interest of the American people. And so now we speed forward 4 years again. And I don't know about you, but I've sworn to myself that I'm not making that decision again, that when I walk away from the ballot this time, it's not going to be with feeling grimy and dirty and feeling like I actually voted out of fear instead of what I actually stand for as an American person. So when I think about, dividing the vote, and we've heard that before, right? And taking away votes from one of the other parties. To me, when I look at where America is right now, having a divided heart and a divided nation is of much more extreme importance to me than voting for something that I entirely don't believe in and having a divided vote. No. And I'll say that to the American people as well. If we continue to let fear drive us and vote, we end up in the same pattern over and over and over again.
And they tell us the same thing, right? Let's fast forward to 2024. You think they're going to say, now we're ready for an independent? We've had 8 years of a Republican. You think the Republicans are going to say, let's try something new? No, they're going to say, no, we got to hold this stronghold. The left's going to go, we really got to get a Democrat in there now. Let's say Joe Biden won right now. You think the Democratic Party is going to say, you know what? Wait, 4 years is enough. Let's try something new. No, you're not going to have that. Now is the time. If COVID-19 taught us nothing else, I'm a minister, so forgive me for going preacher right here. We are not promised tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So for you to tell me not to offer a solution until 4 years from now, that's the luxury of the privilege. And I'm not just talking white privilege. I'm talking all of us who can get up no matter who the president is and provide for ourselves. I know we like to feel like Donald Trump is the end all, right? And he is definitely not who I believe should be running this nation. But we know the truth is the same way when we were shocked he won 4 years ago, we got up, put our pants on like we did the day before, went to our jobs and continued to work. Who does not have that luxury are the same people who do not have the luxury of waiting yet another 4 years or 8 years until the parties feel like they'll let us try something new. We got to start getting suspicious, not about the candidates who are running for us, but we need to get suspicious about the parties who are working so hard behind the scenes to make sure they can scare us into voting for them.
Absolutely.
Wow. Yeah. You can tell we get that question a lot, and I want to apologize in advance for the backlash y'all will probably get for giving us space on here, but we just believe it's everybody's right to know their option. This isn't an endorsement, right, from We Talk Weekly. This is you saying both of them deserve the space like everyone else. People would not believe, Charles, the blatant shut doors. We've had a producer from ABC say, oh, we know she's been running. We've been watching her for several months, but she's too compelling. So we can't risk showing her or else it'll screw up Biden. And, on the right, because we're open women of faith, they're worried that if they show us followers of Christ who say, you know what, this guy doesn't actually look like he's practicing what he's preaching, but there are minister running, 2 women of open faith, they would jump ship in a heartbeat. So we see the block that people are willing to put on Americans' eyes. And, lastly, I'll say we've been told as a people, as Black people, that the Democratic Party is our only option. Listen, I'm not going to say the Republican Party is the fix to that, but I will challenge anyone who believes that we should allow any party to be entitled to our vote. I feel like at this point, we're kind of voting on which party gets to have us for lunch, which party gets to ignore us for another 4 years. And if we want that again, then we'll keep doing the same thing.
Absolutely. Wow. You're muted. You're muted.
There we go. I'm sorry about that. It makes me think as it relates to the narrative of people feeling the need to hush your voice, right? Uh-huh. And without being too, I guess, overly political, right? How important is it for you to understand that you guys are running as 2 Black women in this race with, you have 2 white men as presidents, running for a presidential candidate. You have another white man on the right that's running as a VP. Then you have, a Black sister, running as a VP on the other side. Now we have 2 Black women. How important is it for you guys to, applaud that and
wow. And I don't know if I would say Trump did it. What I think he created was a space that now makes this kind of diversity feel not just like a luxury, but like it's crucial to this moment. Who better to speak into this moment than Black women? Nobody ever asked 2 white guys if they can serve the entire nation and all of its diversity. But when we run as two Black women, people want to know, are we only the president for Black people? But I think Americans should rejoice, because when Black women enter the equation, everybody always rises. We don't even know how to separate out. We always serve everybody in the room. We've been nursing people's babies since the beginning of this nation that weren't our own. So it is literally in our makeup to serve, and to serve widely, and to serve indiscriminately. So I believe that the sign of the two of us running, is a sign of the times. And it's a good sign that says we can move into an era of strength, but also nourishment and nurture.
Yeah. Charles, I want to add to that too. I think the other part of that, and Jay touched on this early, is that we're not in a time anymore we need to ask for permission. Okay. I think it's been the role of the Black woman, even though she has served, even though she has birthed, even though she has nursed, there's always been this need to ask for permission. Is it my time? Can I step into this role? Can I fill this space? Am I qualified? Can somebody let me in? The time for that is over.
Agreed.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. So can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
My mic keep cutting in and out. I'm sorry. And this message is for, I guess this question would be for Ms. Rose. You have a Kamala Harris running, as VP. And you also have somebody by the name of Angela Walker, who's running for the Green Party, also running as VP. You're running as VP. If you were in a debate with them, what would be your shining, I guess, your magic bullet, so to speak, to say, this is why I would be the best candidate, VP candidate, to run for the country?
Wow, that's a fantastic question, Charles. There's a number of things that I could use for that. One of the things that I will use, and I'll just use this as an example, is the civil unrest that we're seeing right now. If we look at Kamala Harris's, if we look at her track record as an attorney general working in California, I think we would be remiss to say that she has consistently worked in the favor and in the interest of Black Americans. I think it's interesting right now that she's taken a stronger position on that now that it's being demanded of her, but that has not been consistently her stance in the past. And what we're looking for right now, again, like Jade said earlier, people are going to lead the way that they have lived, even when it's not just in the best interest of them winning the White House seat. And I think for me, one of the biggest things is going to be a consistency in supporting the disenfranchised, those who have suffered throughout history in places of inequality. You'll see that consistency even when it's not in my interest to do that.
Wow.
You're
on mute.
Something wrong with this mic. And I will throw that same question to you, Ms. Simmons. You have Donald Trump running again. You have Joe Biden running again. And now you, the sister, what can you say in a debate that will have you have everyone look at you and say, you know what, this is the person that warrants the vote?
Yeah. I'm chomping at the bit for the opportunity to be able to debate with those two men, especially. I also give a shout out to the Libertarian Party candidate, Jo Jorgensen, another woman that's running, is on the ballot in all 50 states. And the media doesn't cover her. So you talk about shut out, right? And people need to know education has been a large part of our role here as a campaign. The Republicans and Democrats have a signed law-binding agreement that keeps any other third party or independent candidate voice off the debate stage. So that's why you won't see us there on the 29th, not because we weren't ready to go and rearing to go. I think the differentiating factor is that there's no other candidate who has the pedigree that I have to be able to communicate this nation through this era. I'm one of the most sought after professional speakers in the nation right now, ranked top 2019 and 2020 professional speaker. That doesn't mean you can just put sentences together. I'm brought in because we can communicate people through difficult situations and find uncommon common ground. I believe that in President Donald Trump, we have an instigator in chief. I believe in Joe Biden, we would have an absentee in chief. Someone whose voice would not be powerful enough to move us through. Sure, he's going to feel a little better, right? Election night, if he were to win, it'd be like sipping on some chicken soup, right? It soothes us. We feel like we're getting back to normal. But this isn't a season to go back to normal because we have to admit, prior to COVID, we weren't doing all that well either. So why would we go back there? And as Claudelia said, we've got to look at the past and take it seriously. We can't decide we judge some people on their past and others not so much. You know, Biden himself is the creator of the crime bill that we've seen incarcerate so many young African Americans. And so we've got to keep things real. I don't think that you have to be judged solely on a decision from your past, but I think it does impact how you view people. There's enough statements from Biden's past as well that should have us all a little bit suspicious about how he truly views African Americans. Can those views change? Yes. But what's the core of that view? When you're caught saying that you don't want your children attending a racial jungle, that's a mindset of how you see African Americans. When you're caught saying that if you don't vote for him, you ain't Black, first of all, that's an entitlement that I don't know is very forgivable, because that entitlement is representative of an entire party that thinks it can just expect us to vote a certain way every 4 years and not have to serve us. We ask Americans, don't just give us your vote. People say, oh, Queen, we love you. You got our vote. We say, not so fast. This doesn't always mean we're on the same page, right? And so we tell voters, do your homework. We don't even want your blind vote. We want your research, due diligence vote, because what we say is what we mean. So we want you to buy in now so that when the rhetoric and the message doesn't change, you're okay with that down the road. You're not going to hear another candidate challenge citizens to hold their leaders accountable because they don't want to be held accountable. But when you have women of great integrity, we can tell people we're transparent. Come look, come see. We promise that what you see is what you get, and that we'll do our best to serve you. And I know you're not going to hear that coming out of any of the other candidates.
Wow.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Now,
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead, Sizzle.
I was just going to say, you know, there's been a lot of protesting and conversation around defunding the police and police reform. I was just wondering, like, what is your standpoint, or what, you know, what would you do if you were elected to bring about? I know there's some things that's kind of happening, but what would you do if you were elected to, you know, for police reform?
Yeah. I think you always have to speak in terms of what will bring us the quickest, most powerful, just results. I don't believe that at the end of the day, you throw away, abolish police entirely. I don't think that that's what we need to do. What we need to do is have police function in the way they were designed to function, not originally designed, because the history of policing is troublesome in the Black community. So we got to be honest about that. But I don't believe you can have a conversation about reform unless you start with reforming qualified immunity. If you don't deal with that, you're not ever going to deal with the heart of the issue in terms of accountability. I also believe we should have a national registry so that we can see when these officers are racking up offenses. Imagine if Derek Chauvin could have been tracked at offense number 5, not offense number 16 or 17, where he's now murdering someone because he's not worried about the consequences. We're going to have to root out the good old boy network that police officers will tell you exists. That's why you were able to have 2 officers standing by Derek Chauvin not do anything, because they're thinking that's the big dog on campus. Nothing has happened to him yet. If we interfere, even though we know this is wrong, are we risking not having backup when we're on duty? That's not just a bad apple. That's a bad apple that's been around long enough to sow bad seed and bear bad fruit. So this is a system we have to clean up. I also think part of that solution is creative collaborations that combine law enforcement, mental health services, social work services, so that these agencies can work together collaboratively to de-escalate the situation. We just want one justice system. That's all. That's what one nation means. One justice system that serves all equally. Claudelia will tell you we spent a day in Philly with some young kids who've been in trouble. They've been in trouble with the law, but they're on a path of reform, and it's a difficult path, and they're having to really bear down to make it through. But we want to create systems that help them succeed.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's important too to point out, Jade, as we were speaking with these youth, and so many of them reminded me of when I was a kid, the boys and girls that I grew up with, which unfortunately for me, there was a disproportionate amount of them that went from high school to prison. And it's unfortunate that it works that way. And so another part of this whole criminal justice reform, which is, it's not just police reform, it's reforming the entire criminal justice system, from how youth are dealt with to the overcrowding and the disproportionate sentences that are dealt for minorities. There's a whole revamping and reform of this system that needs to happen. And it's interesting because we were speaking to some of them and we just asked them a candid question. Do you feel that now that you have entered the criminal justice system, that your case and the way that things are being handled for you are treated with fairness? And these kids were 14, 16, 17, and already they said that, for one, the reason I'm even in the system right now is for a small little thing that I did. One kid that we talked to, he slapped a girl on the butt, which, okay, I'm not approving that at all, but he was arrested for that. Now he's in the system. Now he has to go through sexual harassment training, all of this. That the crime does not fit the punishment. And they go to the court system and they see, other people who don't look like them get a slap on the wrist. Oh, we understand you're just, and they get sent home. Or the other kid gets into the detention center. There's a whole reform that we need to do to this entire system.
Wow. Jade, you spoke about with the pandemic, and we have known about the pandemic or coronavirus because we covered it in depth around January in regards to coming from Wuhan. And a lot of people, American people, are saying that they don't feel that the president took it as serious as it should have been. What are your thoughts, and what would you have done differently had you been in that position, elected as president?
Yeah. Well, first of all, kudos. If you were covering it in January, you were ahead of the game. I've been following it myself since early December and couldn't believe it wasn't on the news yet in the media. And by the way, neither party was talking about coronavirus in January. They were both late to the party and they did know about it. They prioritized what? Politics. All right. So this is something that the American people have to pay attention to. I do believe it was mishandled. Our own president applauded China in the beginning for their handling of the virus. We don't talk about that much anymore. I do think one of our major missteps first was in refusing help from other nations. We sat there and watched China go through it, Italy and Iran, and didn't learn anything from it, didn't do anything differently. And I think as an international landscape, we failed each other as partner nations in this virus. But I think one of our major missteps was in how we reopened. We opened fast and we opened carelessly. On the day we reopened, we only had a capacity to test about 150,000 people a day. That sounds like a lot, but experts were telling us we shouldn't open until we could test 500,000 people a day. I would have waited until we could have tested 650,000. Let's go ahead and be extra with it, right? And then that would have probably been unpopular because it would have cost us about 2 more months of shutdown. But here's what we would have had. We would have stabilized, been able to stop the spread much better than allowing the gates to be open, not knowing who was sick. South Korea, man, they mastered the game. They had it set up so they didn't have to even have a full shutdown because they knew who was sick and who was not. If you were sick, you stayed yourself at home. If you were good, you could still work. That meant their economy never had to shut down entirely. If we had stayed shut down the first time, it would have felt a little bit harder. I'm a small business owner. Being open would have been to my benefit because I make the large bulk of my revenue in large crowds, performing and speaking for large crowds. But if you prioritize people over profit, that means you're going to take 1 more month of hardship so that more people live and survive. Now we're watching a second economic shutdown begin to happen. You think it was hard the first time. Talk to people now whose stimulus money has already run out. You see, so what we did was we went for short-term game and we set ourselves up for a long-term loss. I think now for Claudelia and I, one of the number one things we're working on those first 100 days will be about building in 2 things simultaneously: pandemic proofing, because y'all know this is not over, right? I mean, you understand that because we showed ourselves to be divided along party lines in the middle of a pandemic, we now look like a good target for biological warfare in the future. So I think we've set ourselves up now to show a weak spot, which means we have to be engaged in pandemic proofing. The wonderful thing about that is it also will create new jobs. So you better believe as I come up with lots of ideas, Claudelia helps me as well on the strategy and the execution. You're not looking at a sitting, lamed up vice president. You're looking at someone who is already behind the scenes saying, that sounds good, Jade. How do we play this out? How do we serve as many people possible? So it's a dynamic partnership that's designed to serve as many Americans as possible.
Yeah, and I have a question for you, Claudelia. I'm gonna show something real quick. And this came from the Biden marketing campaign. How many people voted? It says almost 65 million voted for Clinton, 62 million Trump. Then you have like 6 million that voted kind of like in the independent, but about 100 million people did not vote.
Yep.
That's such a huge market. And the reason that I bring that up and I want you guys to talk about is it speaks to one that small slice of independent, but the extra 100 million people that didn't vote. So when we talk about your strategies and your marketing, who are you specifically targeting when it comes to your campaign? And do you believe that they will follow you?
Yep. You can go ahead, Claudelia. You start.
Yeah. So you pointed out the group that we're looking at directly. We call it the muted middle. It's the individuals exactly like that who felt that they didn't align with either one of those parties. And so either they stayed at home, but you'll be surprised that there was also even a greater percentage that still voted for the lesser of two evils in that situation. And that's exactly the ones that we're targeting. I love the data that you're bringing up there.
Yes.
I love that. Like that speaks to my heart. Seriously.
Yeah. So listen, look at the disrespect in the chart. I want you to see the disrespect built into the chart. You got voted for Clinton, voted for Trump, voted for other folks, right? Even at the Democratic National Convention, I love me some Michelle Obama, but I'll tell you, she disappointed me because when she ran with President Obama, they ran on a change ticket. Yet there she was scaring the American people. I believe she name checked us. She said, don't waste your vote on people you know can't win. Right? That's the change rhetoric from all those years ago would have been the same for President Obama. Nobody remembers the entire Democratic Party did not back him in the beginning because they thought it was impossible for him to win. He had to win his own party over, and he didn't do that until after he won Iowa. And then when we saw that white people would vote for him, I'm gonna pause right there. When we saw that white people would vote for him, suddenly he was our guy. Right? So we have a very bad habit in our country of forgetting that we are built on doing the impossible. So when we stand here with no shame, we are not the other folks. What we are is another solid golden opportunity for voters to do something differently. Let me say that last slither, that white part of the non-voters that we demonize for not voting. Let me tell you, we should be upset as leaders running for office that 100 million people don't even see a reason to go to the polls. Why? It's not because they're uneducated. It's not because they're uncommitted. It's because they have watched and they don't see themselves being served. We're excited, guys, because we meet them on the street and they admit to us. They say one of two things. I have never voted, but this year we are registering to vote for you. Or, you know what? I'm a sophisticated, educated voter, and I was saying, I'm not doing it this year. I mean, people who look like y'all on the screen now, not the stereotypes we think. They look just like you, and they're saying, oh, I'm not doing it this year. And then they found us and said, you know what? I'm back in, and I'm voting for you. There are also 7 million, this isn't on the chart, 7 million 17-year-olds who turn 18 in time for the election.
Wow.
They are chomping at the bit to not vote like their mom or their dad, and they love what they see in us. You're not going to find another candidate that has Bernie bros, conservative Christian pastors, Native Americans, LGBTQ Christians, all voting for the same candidate because they hear something different. So this is the year of disruption. People say you have zero chance. we also had probably zero chance of a pandemic hitting and shutting our nation down.
Do you think America is ready for a Black president and a Black vice president, female? Can America really digest that?
They've already had us, right? We've already been in these positions in every other area, even when we haven't officially had the title. Let's talk about that. But they're already used to our service and our leadership, and they swear they can't live without it. This is now just making that official. I think we do ourselves a disservice when we say, "Are we ready?" No man is ever going to invite you to come disrupt his paradigm, right? And so we're just two Black women who did not wait around to be dangled in front of a party to be chosen as a consolation prize, right? No shade to Kamala Harris. I support her. I don't agree with her policies. She would not have been my candidate if I were voting Democratic as well. But you will never hear me bad-mouthing her, never hear me telling her to go have several seats, never hear me telling her to wait her turn or run for the PTA instead, because we should be proud when women step forward, even on the other side of whatever aisle we're on. We should be proud, because I'll tell you, this is a sacrificial thing we're doing here. It is not something that gets you any brownie points. I've lost business over this. I definitely have some friends gone silent. Claudelia will tell you, your closest people aren't the ones that back you on these things. We have an incredible, mighty, concentrated team, but what fuels us are the random strangers who find out about us and they're all in. Wow. Because they believe in the vision. They have no reason to be as gung-ho as they are, except that they've done their homework and they've also searched with their heart, and they hear their heart resonating in ours. So that's something for us to be proud of.
Wow. And we had you guys on for so long, and I apologize for taking. I only have a few more questions. If you can just hold on for 2 more minutes.
Let's do it.
No doubt. Hold on, guys. We'll be right back. Don't go nowhere.
Hey, this is Roxanne Shante, and your week cannot be complete unless you listen to or watch We Talk Weekly. Please believe it, baby.
That's right. We Talk Weekly. Please believe it, baby. This your boy Charles Gregory with the beautiful
Lauren Sizzle
and the beautiful
Classy Lady Sparkle.
And you're watching We Talk Weekly's After the Talk with presidential candidate running as independent of Miss Jade Simmons and her VP, Miss Claudeliah Rose. And we really appreciate them from coming on the show and spending some time with us. And we have a few more questions for you guys, but I appreciate the time that you gave to us. Now, we have, and I know Classy Lady and Sizzle, you had a couple more questions. One question that I have, and I'm really curious to know, you have our current president saying, I have done much more than Black folks than any other president and on the face of the planet, pretty much, air quotes, right? And then we have other people that's saying that, if we're supporting our HBCUs, right? Where do you guys stand when it comes to our historically Black colleges and supporting education based around people who look like us?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Claudelia.
Wow. I think that's a fabulous question you just brought up, Charles. Just 2 days ago. So Jade has talked about, what I'm doing currently, right? Senior engineer, technology director with a large aerospace and defense industry. Just last week, I had a conversation about directing some of our cutting edge budget for research and development to HBCUs. We do not invest in them enough. And we don't highlight a lot of the innovations that are coming from them as well. So when you talk about that, Charles, you're talking again right to my heart. Mm-hmm. It's not something that I just give lip service to either. It's something I do directly in action. It's my everyday job. And in my opinion, I feel like we can't support and continue to give credence to a lot of these other universities without talking about some of the historical contributions that our HBCUs have made.
Yeah.
It's a disservice to them. And already, even before the White House, I'm investing in them.
And you'll see on our website, operationrestoration2020.com, we led with education reform. And you'll see me talking about needing to fully endow our HBCUs. Again, I'm going to tell the whole story though. So as we fully endow and make sure that our students who go to these colleges are able to have an incredible education, we're also going to be holding the schools accountable where financial solvency is concerned. We have a big issue of that in the HBCU community, and it does a disservice for us to downplay that, because as we begin to invest more into these schools, we got to make sure that they remain solvent so that students are able to finish their education powerfully. Let me just say one more thing. This is why I would love to debate with the president. I love what you said, Charles. It sounded good, right? All these so-called achievements for African Americans, but we've got to be smarter and do our research. When you hear talk about unemployment being at an all-time low before COVID hit, that still wasn't true even before COVID. What you had was more Americans were working 2 and 3 jobs to make ends meet. Because they were working so many jobs, it inflated the jobs number. So we believe that if America is truly great, you can work 1 job, pay all your bills, provide medical insurance for your family, and have a roof over your head. Right now in this country, there's not one city in the nation where a single mother that has 2 children could afford a 2-bedroom apartment on minimum wage. And when you have a world that has Amazons and McDonald's and Walmarts where the CEOs are making 1,000 times more than their minimum wage employees, there's no way in this world that a great nation should have billion-dollar companies where they build the American dream on the backs of American workers, and then they still have people living below the poverty line on their payroll. That's absolutely unacceptable.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Smart. Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. May she rest in peace. She was a woman that spoke for, the advocacy of women as the Justice Supreme Court. You spoke earlier, Ms. Simmons, on Mrs. Chisholm and, her legacy as regards to, I guess it was in the 70s when she ran for president. A lot of times when we're speaking with women, especially women of color that are in the political world, they ask, what would you want your legacy to be? Wow. I would like to hear that from both of you.
I'm going to put you on the spot first, Claudelia. You're it.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are 2 things, and I'm a mother as well. I have 2 amazing 8-year-old children, and we actually talk about legacy regularly within our family. I think there's 2 things that I would like to impart as part of my legacy. One of those things that's near and dear to me is servant leadership. We have made no apologies about the fact that we are women of faith. That's nothing that I try to sugarcoat or hide from anyone. A large part of that, though, is having respect and honor and integrity for every single person and holding myself to a higher level of accountability than I do anyone else. It's not trying to thrust down their throat, Christianity or whatever, but it's setting an example of how I treat people, how I honor people, and then how I expect myself and my family to live. So that's the first legacy that I want to live. The second thing is purpose. I'm extremely intentional about finding and developing and following my own purpose. I impart the same thing to my children each and every day. Who are you? What are you living for? What's your life mission? And making sure that you carry that out. So even in this run for the White House, it's not a cushy, position that we're in right now. There's a lot of vicious attacks and things like that. But I know that there's a difference that we can make. I know that our nation right now is in hard times, and I'm ready to step up and do my part in making us a great nation I know that we can be. And that's part of my purpose. And that's the second thing that I want to impart.
Yeah. Claudelia took part of my answer there with purpose. I always say on every stage that I'm on that purpose is not the thing you do. It's the thing that happens in others when you do what you do. And if that's my purpose, I get to do that at the piano. I get to do it as a minister. I get to impart purpose into other people in every role. And so to me, the legacy would not simply be being the first Black female president. It would not even be being the first independent. It would be being the president that ignited purpose in American citizens to recover powerfully. You see, we all know just electing a president doesn't really change individual lives overnight. But I would love to be remembered for causing a movement where people who saw me lean into the impossible began to lean into the impossible in their own lives, began to start that business, write that book, impact in the way they know they're called to impact. And they don't wait around. Begin a movement where people don't wait around to be invited to be the solution that only they can be. So I think we have a bright new era ahead. And if Americans are ready, as Claudelia said, to vote vision over fear, then I think we have an exciting journey out of the darkness that is COVID-19 and the racial unrest that we're in right now.
Sizzle. Mm-hmm.
So you just kind of partially answered one of my questions. I did have like 2 questions, if we have time.
Yes.
The one I wanted to ask a little while ago, and that was 1865. That was the last time that we had a president that was elected outside of the major 2-party system. Do you believe that this is a resurgence of the independent parties? And then the second part was, what are you prepared to do should you not win the election? Is this what you're doing? Is this a movement, or is it a moment or a movement? Which you basically just answered that.
Yeah, I think this is, first of all, it's a moment to see the impossible. When you think about everything else we've gone through, it's impossible. Chadwick Boseman, that's impossible, right? Ruth Bader being gone now, that's impossible. COVID-19, that's impossible. George Floyd, let's be honest, we'd seen it before. We were going to see it less than a month later, and another month later, and another month later. So what was unique? Unique was it happened in the middle of COVID-19, which meant we could not turn our eyes from the reality of the injustice. So to me, I feel like God's setting us up to get used to disruption. The one area that hasn't been disrupted yet is politics. So we believe that in 2020, we're the October surprise. Y'all know every 4 years, every election, ask Hillary Clinton about them emails that came out last October, right? In 2016. Listen, I know that's touchy, but I'm telling you, it's called the October surprise. And we believe that we are that surprise, but we think it's a good surprise. I think as we get closer to the election, because this moment is so crucial, I think more Americans are going to go, I don't know if I can do this thing like we've always done it. And we believe our job is to stay standing. You can vote for us in about 40 states right now. You're either going to see us on the ballot, or you'll be able to write us in as a registered write-in. That's a legitimate vote that is equal to seeing our name on the ballot. If you go to our website, you'll see a big map of the states, and it'll tell you exactly how you can vote for us in your state. We've done the hard work. Unlike some other people who jumped in around the 4th of July, we have done the hard work, and we have made sure that we're viable for as many Americans possible. I told you we keep it real.
Yes.
We're working for you. This is not a game to us. We actually started running in January, and I didn't announce until February until I filed my paperwork, because I wanted you to know we were serious and we meant business. And it's been a hard road. It's expensive. People have accused us, Claudelia, that maybe the Russians are funding us. Trump apparently is funding me. Biden is funding me according to the Republicans. And I keep checking the bank account, and as far as I can tell, neither of those 3 sources are funding us. But we're proud to do it the hard way, because then you won't have to have any questions when we're in there.
Rose, you wanted to jump in that and add to that?
No, I mean, I'm foot stomping exactly what Jade said. We're on the same page there.
Yeah.
One thing that I didn't do real quickly is this, because you have to explain this to me right here. This right here, I would be remiss if I didn't bring that up.
This research. I love it.
Yeah, we did our research. We definitely did our research, because one thing before you answer that, because I do want you to talk about that, because that is one of your accomplishments, and I'm a firm believer in one, not only supporting the sisters, right, and building up the sisters as a Black man, right. I think that's very important, but also, I want people to understand when it comes to our platform, we're not endorsing anyone, right? But we would be hypocrites if we don't say that, you know, the reason why we created this was to give people, the voiceless, a platform to have a voice, right? And so this is not to say that, you know, we're endorsing this independent, you know, candidate. What we're saying is we're giving a platform just like anybody else. If Trump people want to call and say, yo, we want to be on We Talk Weekly, come on, Cletus, come on.
That's right. That's
One
right.
of those things. And Biden, Kamala Harris, she, and as a matter of fact, she came to Philadelphia. She anyway. Anyway, if she wants
We
to
hear
come,
that a lot. We hear that a lot. I'm just
if
saying.
you want to come to the platform, they can come and have a platform to speak. So I just wanted to make sure that, you know, that was clear and that was for the record, that anybody is able to come on this platform and have a voice. But yes, please answer that. What is that?
Well, so first of all, what you're saying is the law. The
Right.
networks are actually supposed to cover us because they have covered Biden and they have covered Trump. They are not even abiding by their own law there.
Right.
That picture you saw, I'm proud of. When I said that I'm brought in by major corporations, my initial career was as a classical concert pianist. Over the years, I diversified. What you're seeing, you can see a little bit of it. My concerts go from classical music all the way to rap. Believe it or not, and I produce electronics in between. These corporations bring me and my Yamaha piano in to drive the points home using music. So now when you watch in the media, the few news outlets that I've mentioned will try to limit me, and they'll say, oh, the classical pianist is running for president. They won't tell you that on that stage, I'm brought in by multi-billion-dollar companies to help them figure out how to have either another record-setting year or to power up their people because they've drastically not been able to meet their bottom line. So they won't tell you that because they want us to feel like I can only be, as a Black woman, an entertainer, and they want me to be ashamed of my music. Let me tell you, we need nothing more than creativity in this next era. What better than a musician that will tell you our nation is singing out of tune right now. We are out of harmony. And then if we want to actually orchestrate ourselves through this time, you need a creative thinker who thinks outside of the box, not like every other politician who's willing to collaborate. Artists know how to do that. We're going to have to sketch something new in this season, create something new. Why not have someone whose literal career is to create things out of thin air to cause transformation, reinvention to happen? So when you see the blurb that says she's a concert pianist trying to be president, take your time, go to the website, operationrestoration2020.com. We have a whole section called the Jade Simmons story that outlines how each of the phases of my life, whether it's being a minister, an author, a transformational speaker, and yes, an artist, brings me to this moment in time. I'm proud of that. And man, you make me miss that hair. Listen, I have had one hairstyle for 9 months. My hair used to change every 2 weeks. Your girl likes it shaved on the side. I love color. This is my most conservative look possible. We'll see on November 4th. You asked, what will we do if we're not in the White House? First thing I'm doing is going back to the Mohawk. Right? Maybe even if we're in the White House, right? They'll be like,
yes.
But Julia can lead off on, we know, we talk about this as we've been driving across the nation. What we know for sure is we're never going to go back to doing whatever it was we did in the way that we did. It's absolutely impossible. Wouldn't you say that, Claudelia?
Yeah, absolutely. Charles, Lauren, and Sparkle, I'm only looking at the White House right now. I'm actually not really entertaining any other plan B at the moment. But again, like Jade said, my life has been changed forever through this opportunity. The people that we've met on the streets, the stories that we have heard, my heart has been changed forever. So if it's not in the White House, I will find a place somewhere. I will create a place to serve the American people.
Yeah.
And I have one more question, because when Charles showed that picture and you spoke about how you connect through music and the harmony, and to the people who are voting that may not be in that political realm, that, we speak about the younger people and they're like, hey, I really don't know. I can't connect. So speaking about the connect part, there was an interview that Candace Owens did with Cardi B. and pretty much there was some type of trivial beef that they had because Candace Owen actually she pretty much demeaned Cardi B for interviewing Joe Biden and speaking of saying that, you know, you're an artist, you need to stay in your lane. Anyone who does music should not be interviewing a politician of that stature. It's like Justin Bieber interviewing Trump. I wanted to know, because you made a very poignant point of harmonizing and connecting, and people who don't know the political world, that they're going to look at you and say, hey, I'm going to listen to her versus listening to someone else who may be running, because I can connect in a different way. What are your thoughts on that, and on some of the things that Candace Owens, if you heard what she said about Cardi B in regards to music and politics?
I said earlier, if you want to know how your leader will lead, look at how they have lived. There's talk about Miss Owens also running for office in the future. And what I think she did in that interview was show her true color, which is, if you can't value that person right now, how are you going to value them as leader of the nation? So what you just said is, your voice is irrelevant. It does not count. It should not play a role in national decision making. And the funny thing is, we just spent hours today with youth who are not even old enough to vote, and who may end up, some with felonies that keep them from voting. Yet we spent time with them because we know the policies we create will affect them. If you cannot look, and I take issue with Cardi, we talking lyrics, that's a whole other discussion. But let me tell you, I would still be her president, which means I should hear from her. You understand? And that's why I believe, especially as a person of faith, people get concerned that as a Christian, I can't serve other people. I believe that my faith demands that I honor, respect, and love people, especially when they don't believe or live like me. And so I think you saw the height of political arrogance and political entitlement, and we see it on both sides. That was just one example.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic. Well, I just want to thank you guys for coming to the show. I mean, we had you here, and I appreciate you guys being extremely candid and willing to answer the questions. And I think, to your point, I think it's very important that candidates for the president, and just in politics in general, understand that everyone is an academic, right?
That's right.
And so when you're having this discussion about how important policies are and how important it is to support a certain narrative, they need to talk to certain people.
That's right.
And you have to convey a message in a way that certain people can understand. And too often you have these debates and these political, conversations, pontificate about how political they are, and forget that it's certain people that don't even understand what politics is. Right. So that's just, I guess, one tidbit that I would say to anybody who is running and need that support, to understand that there are other marginalized communities that are being overlooked, that don't understand what this is and how important politics is to them. Right. And so what I'll do at this point, I'm going to leave you guys with the last word. And this is a little different because I want you guys to be able to give your pitch. So I'm going to pull us out. And both you, Jade and Claudelia, I want you to give the pitch to the community to why they need to vote for you. But give us a second, and we'll be right back after this, guys.
First of all, I do want to thank Charles, Lauren, and Sparkle again, not just for the opportunity to speak on your show today, but for your integrity.
Yeah.
Making sure that you are informing the community that you serve. So my last pitch is going to be to the American people. I feel like we have been disserviced for many years, and I am encouraging you, not necessarily to just vote for Jade and I, but to go out, look at the policies that are there, and really understand, first of all, inform yourself, and then really ask yourself, are these the policies that I agree with and that I believe will serve myself and my family, not just for the next 4 years, but for generations to come? think about where we need to be in the future. Think about where we need to recover from, especially right now, and where we need what the nation that we know that we can become in the next several years. And think about, do these policies line up with where you think we need to be?
That's right. And I would say, don't believe the hype. Charles talks so much about narrative. People will try to tell you there's not enough time to consider another option, that there's no way an independent can win. I want you to do this. Pretend as if we still had 2 years out from the election. Not just 40 days, but 2 years out. Now, if you had all the time in the world and you were to actually consider who we were, consider what we stand for, and you find that you resonate with our vision for the nation, and you know that you would vote for us in 2 years, why not vote for us now on November 3rd? If everyone decided to just vote their heart and their vision and not be fearful going to the polls, not settle for the lesser of two evils, we know that the nation would end up with our vision because it is the right vision for the nation. So we're excited. Here's what we're excited to do: not to rule over you, not to have you reelect us, not to attain power because of you. We're excited to serve you. You're not going to find two more servant leaders chomping at the bit to get working on solutions. We want to be done with the campaign so we can just strategize what our rise and our come up looks like as a nation. And we're excited to serve all people, and we're excited to be champions for the underserved as well. So thank you so much, We Talk Weekly, for having us on, for being brave. Our prayer has been that anyone who dares to open their platform, dare to openly associate with us, we just pray blessings over your life and over your projects and over the things that you're leaning into. And we pray that blessings, boldness, and courage will follow you wherever you go.
Amen.